65 million years ago, an asteroid made its way out of the belt and sped toward Earth. It turned red as it entered the atmosphere, and then it sped past, missing the planet entirely. Millions of years later, two apatelurosauruses named Henry and Ida are busy cultivating a field next to a river at the base of Claudith Mountain. Henry sprays the crops with water from his mouth. When Ida calls out, "It's time." She has a large egg and two small ones in her nest, and the small ones hatch first, giving them a boy and a girl, Buck and Libby. The large egg still doesn't hatch, so Buck hits it with a stick. The top pops off, and they look inside and see a tiny dinosaur clinging to the egg. Slowly, Arlo climbs out and tries to walk, awkwardly falling over at first. Henry shows them all the farm and the mountain, saying they will all take care of it together. At the age of 5, Buck and Libby are helping out with the chores, but Arlo's fear made him hate his chore of feeding the chickens. Ida puts a bucket of corn around his neck and coaxes him into the coop. He sees a chick trapped in some weeds and frees him, only to have the mother chicken come up behind him and squawk loudly. Scared, Arlo runs into the silo, where Henry is storing corn. He seals the door with a boulder, keeping the food safe from scavengers. Ida tells him he should make his mark, and he presses his foot down in the mud and stamps it on a rock, then places it on top of the silo. He tells Ida to make her mark, since she made the cabin, the fence and 3 children. Henry tells the kids they have to earn the right to make their mark, by doing something big, for something bigger than themselves. When they are 10, Buck and Libby have earned their marks by clearing trees and plowing a field. But Arlo still hasn't done anything to earn his mark. Arlo is determined to complete his chore, but Buck plays a prank on him, scaring him off before he can finish. Henry decides to take Arlo out into the field at night, telling him to walk to the middle. A bug lands on his nose, and he screams for his dad. Henry walks up and blows on the bug, revealing it to be a firefly. "Sometimes, you gotta get through your fear to see the beauty on the other side," he tells Arlo. Then he waves his tail through the grass, causing more fireflies to pop out. Excited, Arlo does the same thing. Then Henry tells him that he has a special chore for Arlo, so he can make his mark. The next day, Henry takes Arlo to the silo and tells him that there's a critter climbing over the fence and stealing the corn. He tells Arlo that his chore is to catch it, then shows him how to build a trap with a rope and net, and an ear of corn on the ground for bait. Using a pumpkin for demonstration, he tells Arlo that when he smashes the critter with a mallet, then he'll be able to make his mark. Later, Arlo hears the sound of the trap. With the mallet in hand, he approaches and sees a human child trapped and choking with the net wrapped around his neck. Arlo sighs and lets the boy go, but the boy approaches him, sniffing around. Arlo backs away, tripping over a rock and letting out a scream. Startled, the boy runs off as Henry runs over. Henry sees the boy escaping and yells at Arlo for letting him go. Henry tells Arlo to come with him as he follows the boy's tracks. Just then, it started to rain. Arlo worries that they'll get lost, but Henry tells him that as long as he can find the river, he can find home. Henry tells Arlo that the boys' tracks are getting washed out in the rain, so they have to move quickly. Lightning and thunder are crackling all around them, and Arlo slips and falls in the mud. Henry tells him that they should head home. Just then, a landslide causes the river to overflow. Henry uses his strength to push Arlo to safety, before being swept away. With Henry gone, Ida and the kids struggle to keep up with the chores. Arlo takes corn into the silo for the winter, but he finds the boy eating it. Arlo chases after him, grabbing an ear of corn from his mouth. As they struggle, Arlo falls into the river and cries for help, but nobody hears him. Careening down the river, Arlo smacks his head against a large rock and is knocked unconscious. He wakes up lying on a sandbar, and sees that he's miles from home. The only sound he can hear is a howl coming from the boy, and he sees him at the top of a cliff. The boy watches as Arlo awkwardly climbs up the cliff, then he jumps on Arlo's face. Arlo shakes him off, and then climbs up to the cliff edge, when he sees that the boy has disappeared. Arlo climbs up to the top of a ridge, trying to find home. He sees the river, and remembers Henry's words. After walking up the river for a while, he sees a berry tree, and balances on a rock to get the berries. He loses his balance and falls, landing with a pile of rocks trapping his leg. Stuck, he closes his eyes and falls asleep. The next morning, the sound of geysers wakes him up, and he sees that the rocks have been moved, freeing his leg. He sees human tracks, and wonders if it was the boy who helped him. As he resumes walking up the river, heavy rain comes down. Arlo sees all the other animals take shelter, but he has none. He hears a rattle in the bushes, and the boy comes out and offers him a lizard, and then a bug. Arlo has no interest in eating either one. Then the boy brings back some berries, and Arlo happily eats them. He asks the boy if he knows where to find more, not sure if the boy understands. The boy runs off, and Arlo follows him to a cliff ledge. Arlo falls over, with his mouth gripping one edge and his legs on the other. The boy uses Arlo for a bridge, and then shows him a berry bush. Arlo flings himself to the other side, then runs toward the bush. Just then, a snake falls out and attacks Arlo. The boy grabs the snake's tail and starts to gnaw on its skin. The snake slithers away, and Arlo realizes the boy had saved him. Together, Arlo and the boy are walking up the river, when Arlo hears a voice say hello. Looking around, he finds a Styracosaurus with big horns. His name is Forest Woodbush. Small creatures are perched all over the horns, and he says they are there to protect him. He saw the boy protect Arlo, and says he could use the boy as another protector. Arlo tells Forrest the boy is with him, and Forrest asks what the boy's name is. Arlo says he doesn't know, and Forrest says, I name him, I keep him. They both start calling out names, getting no response. Arlo yells out, Spot. And the boy looks up at him. Come here, Spot. The boy walks up to Arlo. Forrest tells him not to lose Spot on his way back to Clawtooth Mountain. Walking back, they hear a squeak and see a gopher popping its head out of a hole. Spot tries to pounce, but the animal quickly ducks back down. Spot puts his mouth to the hole and blows, causing a gopher to pop out, and then scurry back in. Arlo does the same thing, causing more gophers to pop out. Displeased, the gophers bite Arlo, causing him and Spot to run for safety. They find themselves on a ledge above the river. Another gopher bites Arlo, sending him down into the river. He struggles to stay afloat, and Spot dives in after him and demonstrates how to swim. Arlo catches on and swims to shore with Spot. Arlo realizes his body is covered with leeches and tries to shake them off. Spot helps peel off the stubborn ones. They continue walking and find some fruit, and both eat heartily. Then they start to hallucinate, realizing there was something in the fruit. Tired, they both fall asleep. They wake up at night, and walk through a meadow. Arlo waves his tail through the grass, causing fireflies to pop up. Excited, Spot tries to grab them, catching one in his hands. Arlo blows on it, making it light up, and Spot lets it go. Arlo says he misses his family, and Spot tilts his head in confusion. Arlo breaks some sticks and makes dinosaur shapes, saying that one is him, and the rest are Buck and Libby, and Mama and Papa. Then he draws a circle around them and says they are his family. Spot grabs some sticks and makes 3 human shapes, then draws a circle around them. Arlo tells him that's his family. Spot lays 2 figures flat on the ground and covers them with dirt. Arlo does the same with his Papa figure. Together, they howl sadly at the moon. The next day, they resume walking up the river, when a violent storm hits them. Arlo curls up under a fallen tree, with Spot following him. When it ends, Arlo climbs out and sees destruction everywhere, and he realizes he can't find the river. In the sky, he sees pterodactyls flying in formation, like a search and rescue team. Arlo calls out to them, but Spot scurries off and hides. Thunderclap, Downpour and Cold Front land next to Arlo, and offer to lead him back to Clawtooth Mountain. They find an animal trapped under a fallen tree, and Arlo helps them clear the tree away. Thunderclap picks up the animal, but instead of letting it go, he throws it into his mouth and swallows it. Scared, Arlo looks around and sees Spot hiding beneath some debris. The pterodactyls can smell him, and they ask Arlo where he is. Arlo tries to misdirect them, but when he nervously glances in Spot's direction, Thunderclap flies over to him. Spot runs away, with Thunderclap giving chase. Arlo runs over, and Spot jumps on his back. Arlo sees a long-necked dinosaur grazing and calls out for help, but then he sees that it's actually 2 T-Rexes. Trapped between the pterodactyls and the now charging T-Rexes, Arlo curls up into a ball over Spot. Suddenly, the T-Rexes attack the pterodactyls and drive them away, and then they approach Arlo. He's frozen with fear, but the T-Rexes help him up, and introduce themselves as Ramsey, a girl, and Nash, her brother. Their father, Butch, walks up and Arlo sees a giant scar on his face. Arlo asks him for help getting home, but Butch tells him they don't have time to help, since they're trying to find their herd of longhorns. Arlo offers to let Spot sniff out the herd, in return for helping him back home. Spot is able to find their tracks, but feather on the ground indicate that the herd was taken by rustlers. Following the tracks, They find the herd grazing in a nearby field. Knowing the rustlers are lying in wait, Butch tells Arlo to stand on a rock near the herd and scream, and then stand still when the rustlers charge toward him. Nervously, Arlo heads to the rock with Spot. He tries to scream, but his fear made him silent. Spot chomps his leg, and he lets out a pained yell. 3 raptors rustle through the grass, and walk up to Arlo. They